We're learning a Sicha of the Rebbe on Korach, and I believe this is an edit. We're learning it from the unedited version, but I believe it's an edited Sicha and Lakutei Sichas Chelik David Dalid as well. So let's bring up the
What do you
Sicha.
mean by edited, not edited?
The Rebbe edited some of his talks extensively, and those were published in a group of books called the Lakutei Sichos. So, that's that would be edited talks. Although the Rebbe had many more talks, but that's what we usually learn from. But this one is, I think it's here, but it's from the edited talk, and I think it's actually based on the edited version, translated from Yiddish into Hebrew. Okay. So we're learning. This is a Sicha Parshas Korach. It was the 8th. It was the 5th of the month of Tammuz. Good Chodesh, everyone, in the year Tafshin Chav Beis, which is corresponding to 1952. So the Rebbe says like this: Isa b'seder olam. It's brought down in the book of so to say of life, or the book of of the happenings of the world. It's a sefer. It's a book. It's a medrash. It says Shemachlekes Korach v'Adasi al Moshe v'Aaron. At what point of time in the history of the Jewish people in the desert was there the argument or the rebellion of Korach and his crew against Moshe and Aaron? It happened as it happened in the parsha, meaning to say after the story of the spies. And the proof is that this happened right after the story of the spies. Mitainis Dasan Vaviram. From one of the things Dasan and Aviram said to Moshe Rabbeinu in their claim to Moshe, why they're rebelling and not going to listen and not going to pay heed to Moshe's call, that they said, Af loy el eretz zavas chalav udvash hevi, that you're not even bringing us to the land. Meaning, this happened after the decree of the spies that Moshe told them in the name of God that they won't be going to the land. So they use that as one of their claims against Moshe. Shemoshe Rabbeinu hoitzio isami Mitzrayim, that they said Moshe took them out of Egypt. Kedei lachaloisem. So the Rebbe says the chaloisa means umrengen, ze means to kill them or to let them die, bamidbar in the desert. Why? Because they were just told they're going to spend 40 years in the desert, and whoever was above the age of 20 won't live to enter the land. Shetayna zum moichitla, from the fact that Dasan and Aviram said this proves means to say that when did this happen? At what time of the history? After they were told that they're going to die in the desert. That's why they said we're going to die in the desert. You're not taking us to the land. So one needs to understand. Aaron was appointed high priest before that, right after from the beginning, and especially during the time of the building of the Mishkan. Here, this is almost a year later. So why did Korach wait so long to if he had an issue, why didn't he bring it up right away? So Tzivi HaKadosh Baruch Hu litelas avodim me'habichayrim v'lasis oisel Aaron u'bonav hayu b'shas matan Torah. When was the initial time God said He's taking away the priesthood from the firstborn, which was initially the idea was the firstborn would be all the firstborn of any family would be the priest, and God took it from the b'chayrim, the firstborn, and gave it to the tribe of Cohen, to Aaron and his descendants, to the Kohanim. Or you could say, if it didn't happen exactly in Matan Torah, it happened, like I said before, Mishahukam HaMishkan, when the Mishkan was set up. According to all opinions, Hakahuna G'dayla de Aaron, the high priest, the position that was given to Aaron, that happened during the dispute or rebellion of Korach. It started in punctuality, everyone agrees, on the 8th day of the dedication of the temple, of the tabernacle. The question is, when was he appointed that he would have that job? But when did he start filling that job? In 7 days, Moshe prepared the Kohanim, Aaron and his sons, and the 8th day, Aaron took over. From then onwards, Aaron was the high priest. Klemer, Shishi b'Sivan b'Shana HaKademas. Whether we're talking about the 6th of Sivan the year before, or the 23rd of Adar, or Rosh Chodesh Nisan, means either it happened when they put up the Mishkan, or it happened in the giving of the Torah, or Rosh Chodesh Nisan. All these were well before the time of the spies. The spies were sent well after and it finished on Tisha B'Av. So you have to go 40 days back. There's time for him to have been bothered by the appointment of Aaron. Why does Korach wait with his crew to set up a rebellion against Moshe and Aaron until after the story of the spies? So what the Rebbe is connecting over here is that something that happened in the story of the spies that triggered Korach's rebellion. Even if you're going to say she'ikra machlekes shel Korach al kach she'Elitzaphan ben Uziel, that Elitzaphan ben Uziel, which was a member of the Kahas family, Nisman Elinasi Abnei Kas, he became the prince of the family of Kahas. Means within the tribe of Levi, we learned from the beginning of Bamidbar that the tribe of Levi was divided into three families: Kahas, Merari, and Gershon. And he had leaders that were positioned, princes that were positioned in the heads of these families. And Eltzaphan, the son of Uziel, which was a family member of Korach, he was appointed the Nasi of the family Kahas, and that bothered Korach as well. He wanted at least that position. Harigamat Hismanus Shalitzafan Haisizman Ravifneza Beis Minyan Halavim. Also, his appointment was before then also. As soon as he was appointed as the prince of the family Kahas, it should have triggered Korach to rebel. Means, why does Korach wait till after the story of the Meraglim, of the spies? When did God start counting the Jewish people? Through Moshe, the first of Iyar, when Eltzaphan was appointed as the prince. When do the spies come back with their bad report and they get punished? And this after this starts the rebellion of Korach is only Tisha B'Av. So that's a few months. And Korach only starts his argument the soonest was right after Tisha B'Av. So from this we can build clearly. There was something in the story of the spies that triggered the rebellion of Korach, not just the fact of what Dasan and Aviram said that they're going into the land. Why? Because Dasan and Aviram weren't going into the land, but Korach wasn't part of that gezerah. He wasn't part of that decree. The sons of Levi were not included in the decree, so it didn't affect Korach. Okay. So to understand this, we have to understand what happened with the spies and how Korach misunderstood this to start a rebellion. So Tanis HaMeraglim Hoysa, the claim that the Meraglim said was, Gefi Shekvar Duver, as we spoke in other times, Shetzrichem Lihois, that the idea has to be people, our job as Jews, they felt, was that Jews should be disconnected from the world, should live a lofty life. They like the desert. There's a tabernacle, there's Moshe, there's the clouds, there's your food, there's no labor, and you could spend the whole time studying Torah and doing mitzvahs to the limitations that you would have in the desert. Because they felt that the Jews should, that avoda, they felt fundamentally the idea of being a Jew is to be disconnected. And therefore they felt the best option was for them to stay in the desert. So the world and the happenings and going on to the world shouldn't disturb and interrupt their connection, their dveikus, their cleaving to Hashem through limud Torah. They wanted to study Torah all day, do mitzvahs. They wanted to be in the yeshiva the entire day. Their monetary needs being taken care of. Their physical, everything, their setup is all taken care of. And they could live in the desert and study Torah all day. Anything else would be a distraction. Moshe told him that that's not the way it is. It's not about sitting and studying Torah the whole day locked up. The idea is you have to go out to the world and do the world and engage in the world of action. And the real true way of elevation is the action of the mitzvahs, the physical mitzvahs that are done in this world. What's the difference if the emphasis is on the focus of studying Torah in a way of disconnect, or finding the opportunity to do as many mitzvahs as possible, which involves being involved in the world? So the Rebbe says like this: but Torah, what's the idea of Torah? In Yana Havana Vasaga, its idea is to understand and comprehend. Yesh madregas shaynis, and there's different levels. Yeshmi There are those who have a smaller, limited amount of ability to comprehend. You have those who understand better. When it comes to action and mitzvahs, Shav and Kol B'nai Yisrael, everyone's equal. Means although there could be difference in the kavanot, in the intention, what I'm thinking when I put on my tefillin, when I daven, or what I'm thinking when I give tzedakah or any mitzvah, the kavanot could be different, but the action of the mitzvah is all the same. Did you put on tefillin? Did you not put on tefillin? Did you give the charity? Did you not give the charity? Did you light the candles? Did you not light the candles? Did you keep the laws of kosher? Did you not keep the laws of kosher? That's equal to everyone. It's not based on how smart you are or learned you are. It means learned helps in how you perform the mitzvahs, if you know how to do it. But in the actual obligation you have to fulfill the mitzvahs, everyone's equal. Ma'aseh nochas tefillin shekai Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu put on tefillin, who oisa ma'aseh she'oisa Yehudi pasha, it's no different in the action of the mitzvah. We're not talking about the kavanah, the intention of the mitzvah, where your mind is when you do the mitzvah, but the actual fulfillment of the obligation of the mitzvah that Moshe Rabbeinu does when he puts on tefillin is no different than the simple Jew puts on tefillin. Chilukim yesh rak b'kavanas mitzvah. The differences are only in the intentions. What am I thinking when I do the mitzvah? Aval b'maisa mitzvah shavim kol b'nei Yisrael. But when it comes to action, an action of a mitzvah, again, you have to. The more you know, the better you can perform the mitzvah and its obligations. But when we're talking about, as we look at the action of the mitzvah, if a person puts on tefillin, he's no different than the greatest tzaddik that puts on tefillin. Or when the woman lights Shabbos candles, according to hatzlacha in the right time, she's no different than the greatest of the women that light Shabbos candles. In the action of the mitzvah, everyone's equal. And this is specifically why Korach comes now. Means when Korach hears this, that the Meraglim said that we want to put our emphasis on studying, on logic, on smarts, and the better a person is learned, the more the person's able to study Torah, and therefore we should stay in the Beis Medrash, and we shouldn't go out, we should stay in the desert, stay in the tents of Torah. So when Korach hears that, Moshe says, no, that's not the way, that's not the ikr. The main point of being in this world is to do the action, and the action of the mitzvah, the way it's performed in its action, is the ikr. That's how you bring down the light. So then Korach says, he has an issue now. Korach, when it comes to studying Torah, of course he knew Moshe is on a higher level, and Aaron is on a higher level than the rest of the Jewish people. Moshe studied Torah with God. He was on the mountain for 40 days. Moshe was the first person to receive the Torah from God. And in the way the Gemara tells us, how Moshe taught Torah. Who is the first student of Moshe? His older brother Aaron. And then the elders. And only afterwards with the rest of the Jewish people. And when the Gemara tells us how he learned, it says that Aaron learned it 3 times. The next learned it 2 times, and the Jewish people learned it 1 time. Aaron sat in on the rest of the classes. So he's much better. He was on a much higher level of Torah than Korach was. And of course Moshe was. It's not just that Moshe and Aaron learned it first in time, that they knew Torah before Korach knew Torah. It was clear to Korach that Moshe's understanding of Torah and Aaron's understanding of Torah was not just ahead in time, but ahead in quality as well. They understood Torah on a much higher, deeper level than the rest of the Jewish people. Tainus Korach. So what's the wording of Korach's argument, his rebellion? What does he say? Ma'adu tisnasu. Why are you guys lifting yourself above the rest of the people? So you can't claim, why are you lifting yourself above the other people? Because in the study of Torah. That he understood, of course they're greater than the rest of the people. But he says, if you're telling the spies that studying Torah, as important as it is not the ikr, is not the main thing. Ikr means the main thing. The main point of the kavanah, of the intention of Hashem in creation, and why he gave us Torah, and why he took us out of Egypt, why he put us in Egypt, was to go out to the world and do mitzvahs in the world. If that's the case, and mitzvahs are equally between the most simple person and the highest person, then he says, Ma'adu tisnasu, what makes you greater? If it's all about the action everyone's equal. His claim was, if the main thing is the mitzvah, and the action of the mitzvah, everyone's equal. And this everyone's equal. And this is why he doesn't even start a rebellion The Rebbe is not going into if he had intentions for rebellion before, or if he had issues before. It could be in a certain sense there was a level of honesty in the argument. He says, "I don't understand what makes you better. If it's all about the action, everyone's actions are equal." Because after the spies wanted to emphasize to only study Torah and do avodah spiritually, and that depends on the level of the person. And lishar b'midbar, they want to stay in the desert. V'liyos minutakim me'olam, to be cut off from the world. V'azeh onu Moshe b'shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And on this claim, Moshe tells them in the name of the Jewish people, shechayavim dafka likanas l'Eretz Yisrael. No, you can't stay in the desert. You can't cut yourself off. You must enter the land, Eretz Nesheves, k'dei l'kayim mitzvahs b'gashmis. So you should actually be able to do the physical mitzvahs. You have to remember something. There was one condition where the man couldn't land. The man is the food that fell from heaven from the Jewish people for the Jewish people that sustained them throughout the desert. So if they would have walked through Saudi Arabia or through Turkey or through Syria, this man would have fallen. The only place the man cannot be is in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael requires that you can't rely on miracles. You have to invest yourself into. I'm not sure who this L is. I may have to take them off if they've misbehaved. Sorry, Laura. Okay. So so when you go into Eretz Yisrael, that's when it's Eretz Nesheves. That's when it comes to land. And the whole point is, he says, in order to be able to do the mitzvahs ma'asis, you have to leave the desert. And they wanted to cut themselves off from the world and to stay in the desert, the place where they could emphasize and focus on in hisbonenus and contemplation, lock themselves up, turn off their phones. But they can't do that because the action is the main thing. Then Korach comes and he says, what makes you greater? Why are you giving all these positions of power and authority when we're talking about action and everyone's equal in action? What's so special about Moshe and Aaron? Your greatness is only in spiritual growth and in study of Torah. And yes, of course, Korach are arguing. We need Moshe to teach us what to do. But as far as like positions of separation, of hisnasus, that you're greater, everyone's doing the mitzvah equally. If I put on film, I'm accomplishing the same thing when you put on film. But when it comes to the main point, which is the mitzvah, everyone's equal. And based on this, we'll understand another question. How could the Korach and his 250 companions of princes, these were people that were people of stature, claim to Moshe and Aaron, what makes you so great to elevate yourself? When they said everyone is holy, all the people are holy, everyone could do mitzvah. God is amongst everyone. So the Rebbe says, I don't understand, what was Korach saying? If Korach was a simple person, a low-level person, so his claim would make sense. But here we're talking about Korach, who himself had a position, and his members were also people of position. The Torah clearly says they themselves were nasiim. The word nasi means elevated. Hisnasus, to be elevated. They themselves were separated from the people. So how could they say that? Why is Moshe? Because Moshe has a higher position than them. They're not the regular person. They're also a position of leadership. Korach was part of the family of Levi, the tribe of Levi, and the whole past 5 weeks we're learning about the uniqueness of the tribe of Levi. So what kind of chutzpah does Korach have to say? What makes you greater? You're also different. God just separated you for the past 5 weeks. God's been separated you from the rest of the people. So you have the chutzpah to come and claim to Moshe Rabbeinu. And we know clearly they weren't coming to say, we no longer want these positions of separation, of elevation. We see clearly they wanted to be the high priest, the priests. Moshe says, why are you overreaching? Moshe said to them, God made you special. Why are you overreaching to ask for the priesthood? So the question is, what was Itaka overreaching? If his claim is, Ma'adu tisnasa, what makes you so much greater? What makes you greater? You're a position of power also, a position of elevation. How could they come and claim that Moshe has no right to be separate from the people when he's also separate? Therefore, we have to say, when they came and they said, why are you elevating yourself? They didn't mean to say, no one's a fool enough to say in any society, and of course not within Yiddishkeit and Judaism, that there's no such thing as leadership. The society would fall apart, right? We say clearly in Pirkei Avos, Mispal b'shleim shemachos. There has to be government. There's no governing body, then people will eat each other up alive, the Pirkei Avos says. They understood there has to be seder, there has to be snasus, there has to be elevation. So what was their claim then? He said, of course, there has to be people within the people that are the princes, that are elevation, even the concept of a Levi. But the idea of the level, the difference of Moshe and Aaron is not just positions from within the people, but it's a position totally above the people. A hisnasis of melech, of like a king. The idea of king, of that royalty, right? They understood a democratic system where people are voted in. Obviously, someone who's in a government official is in a higher position than someone who's a non-government official because you need higher positions. But this idea of a king, of a high priest, this level of separation, that they didn't want to subscribe to. The Kach Tanu, that's what they said. Hey Nemes, we understand. Sheyesh chilukim madregas bein bnei Israel. There are definitely differences amongst the Jewish people. There's certain people that are on a more lofty, higher level. And because they have the certain elevations, and with those elevations comes the ability to guide and to help others, so there definitely has to be positions of authority, positions of elevation. And that itself helps the people that are on a lower level. Like I said, you can't do a mitzvah properly if you don't know the laws. But fundamentally, they saw it as within positions from within the people. And said the people as a body, kulam kadeshim, everyone's holy. And therefore, they viewed that the positions of authority within the Jewish people have to be within a level that everyone has a connection, although there are those who are of a higher position, but within erech, within range of each other. Why is one person better than the next? Because one person maybe understands a little better, so he or she could teach a little better. But fundamentally, because the main point is the action, so the elevations that maybe one person has in his or her kavanah, or the position that one has in helping teach for the simpler people to know how to do the ma'isa, we understand the structure. But when we have to value, when it comes to what does God want, at the end of the day, He wants action, like Moshe told the spies, and therefore that's the emphasis. So therefore, the leadership or the elevation has to be within range. And it's fundamentally everyone's equal. Why is Moshe? What makes Moshe the king? So the Rebbe used to speak about this idea many times. Why is there a Rebbe? This is the same question. Why is there a need for a Rebbe? Why is there a need? I mean, we're coming to Gimel Tammuz now. Why do you need a Rebbe? You need a rabbi to teach? Fine, you have a rabbi to teach. You need a class to know the halachas or the Sakshir and Gemara. Fine, I understand that. But what's this concept of a Rebbe? What's this concept of a Melech? Moshe Rabbeinu, right? A Rebbe, king, is is no connection between. It's not within range, and this Korach was fighting against. And because it's all about the action. There's no place in Judaism for one person to be on the level of a king, so disconnected and so elevated from the next person. Another idea of what was bothering Korach, and he came to claim against the rule of Moshe, is Akesher Shal Anshe Medina Imalkam. What is the relationship in the interaction between the people, the folk, and the king. And he saw that was very unique. This whole elevation that Moshe had was unique. The dugma, kesher shel talmud l'rabbi. HaKesher shel talmud l'rabbi hu rak binyanim shel Torah shetzrichim lekabel meno. Like I said before, when it comes to a student and a teacher, so what's the elevation? What's the separation between the student and the teacher? Is the teaching that this teacher teaches the student. But when it comes to the people and a king who it's not just because what makes me the teacher and you the student because I'm teaching and you're learning. Every part of the essence of the king is separate and elevated from all parts of the other people. There's no connected any part between the king and the people. Hold on, Aaron. Not only does the king tell them what the rules are and what are the things that are connected to the rule of the king. Everything that exists, if you live in the king's kingdom, is under the king. And everything about the king is elevated and separate from the people. Yes, Aaron. We don't hear you. We don't hear you. Something wrong with your mic.
Who teaches the rabbi and who teaches the king?
The king. It's not about teaching the king and teaching the rabbi. First of all the kings and all the teachers had obviously had teachers. David had a teacher. Samuel, Nasan, Chiashaloni, Tachlomo. The idea. It's not about the teaching of the king. It's about the level. The king as a king. Even if David was taught by someone, he was much elevated than that person. A king, by definition, is elevated from the people. So if he needs information, if he needs to be taught, he has a rabbi. That's sure. David had teachers, but he's the king. That's separate. That's elevation.
Okay.
I'll get to your question at the end, Laura. Okay, so he said, so Derchem super Gemara. What do we see in the Gemara teaches us something? It says, Oidis echad chahaya machvi b'machu kami malka. What does that mean? Someone who once indicated, made a sign about something in front of the king, which means he made a gesture in front of the king, which is disrespect for the king. That has nothing to do with the king being the king, with as I say, getting information from the king or rules from the king. It wouldn't just it's not a big deal if a person makes a sign in front of the king, meaning to say it's disrespectful in front of the king to behave a certain way. But the Gemara says that the person was sentenced to death. The Gemara Chagiga tells us the story. The person was sentenced to death as a person who rebelled against the king because he was careless in front of the king. What was his sin? By making a sign in front of the king, he kept his identity, his identity, separate from the king in front of the king, and that's a sign of rebellion. That was considered rebellion. If a person does anything and doesn't just stand with total nullification in front of the king, is a sign of rebellion, even though fundamentally what he did has nothing to do with an actual rebellion. The fact that he's made a sign, he just showed that he has something to say, or that he exists. That thing doesn't disrupt the kingdom or the government. Like my Talmud, it's not, you can't compare a person who makes a sign in front of the king to a student who teaches or says a law in front of the teacher. When a student says a law in front of the teacher, that's the teacher's job to be teaching. So you're countering the position of the student versus the teacher because the teacher is supposed to be teaching. But here, a person standing in front of the king and makes a gesture. Why is that considered a merida b'machas? Why is that considered rebellious? For more information, you could look at the story in Chagiga, page 5, side 2. But that's the point that the Rebbe is trying to bring out. Nevertheless, it's considered rebellion. The idea of being a king is the king penetrates the entire existence of all the people and all the aspects of their being. And because of that, even in the most simple of things, and even even making a sign with the hand is a person who's exercising an expression of their own existence versus being totally nullified to the king, and therefore is worthy for the person to be punished for that level of rebellion. Although maybe not that story, that Moshe wasn't putting people to death for making the signs, but the idea that Moshe was the king so much above the people is how that level of isnasus, of elevation. And here the Rebbe is going into what does it mean to be a melech by the Jewish people. A king is not only a rebbe, a teacher, meaning a rebbe, I mean in the sense of a teacher. But when we talk about melucha by the Jewish people, is that everything that the Jewish people need, from the most mundane thing to the most spiritual thing, comes through the king. It's not just hasagas nailas kedema. It's not just great ideas of intellect. Elegam kol in your name. Anything you need, you look towards the king for that need. V'ad linyanim pshutim yesh, in the most simple of things. V'cheinu gam b'splashusa d'maisha b'chol dara. Now the Rebbe kicks in this connection. The Rebbe spoke about this in 1962, but this is around the time of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz. The Rebbe says, so too is the extension of Moshe in every generation. This is the idea of a chassid and a Rebbe. The Rebbe penned this idea. We learned a letter a few years ago on Gimel Tammuz. That what does it mean to be a Rebbe, a Nasi? Is that everything comes through the Nasi, not just specific ideas. Eitzal Nisim, Rashi B'nai Yisrael, by the leadership of the Jewish people, Shekol Anshe Dairim, anyone who lives in the generation of that Nasi, Tzrichim L'kabel Chayusim Aydei Nisim, all vitality, physical, spiritual, material comes via the Nasi, through Moshe. V'zu Haisatainus Korach, and Korach was not accepting this. Ki Kol Eida Kulm Kadeshim, everyone's holy. Why do I need to receive everything from Moshe? I can learn from Moshe. Why do I have to receive all my substance, everything I get from Moshe? Although that was the fact, right? When they needed food, they didn't go anywhere else. They went to Moshe. When they wanted water, they went to Moshe. When they needed clothing, or they needed this, or they were tired, or they were whatever, they went to Moshe. We don't find, the Torah doesn't record, or rarely records, when they came to Moshe with a difficult tosfos, or pshat in the Pnei Yeshua. Right? So we find that the people came and asked Moshe, they wanted to do Korban Pesach. They came and they asked Moshe Rabbeinu, the women of the daughters of Tzlavcha, they want to inherit the land. But again, these were all things, it wasn't about studying the Torah on a study, it was things that they wanted to do. I want to sacrifice the Korban Pesach. Lama Negar, why am I being let out? What are we going to? I want to have a portion of the land. These were things that they wanted. But we find everything they wanted, they went to Moshe. So at the same time, but nevertheless, Korach saying, why is it like that? Why every time I need something, I have to go to Moshe Rabbeinu? Why when I'm thirsty, I go to Moshe? Why when I'm hungry, I go to Moshe? Why when I want a piece of meat, I go to Moshe? We just said that the emphasis is on the mice and the action. And if the emphasis is on the action, so we could all do action. What's this elevation that Moshe Rabbeinu has? There's obviously a lot of footnotes here from the Rebbe that would be interesting to study, but we're going to just learn the original text. Why, when it comes to the simple things of life, why do we need to get that via Moshe? Why, when I'm thirsty, hungry, why, when I have personal needs, do I have to go to Moshe for a bracha or Moshe for insight? So what's the answer? This is all we've been emphasizing at Korach's claim. So what's Moshe respond to Korach? When tomorrow comes, we're going to see clearly that who's the Holy One and the close to Hashem. Who does God want as a Levi and who does God want as a Kohen? Laura, I'm just going to answer your questions on the chat. The daughters of Tzlavcha were from the tribe of Menashe. And although Moshe was the most humble man, but that was the way he viewed himself. But he didn't shy away from exercising authority. Rashi explains, why did Moshe say, wait till tomorrow? Why couldn't Moshe immediately respond to Korach? Rashi says two reasons. One is he wanted to give them time to do tshuva. The second reason is, Rashi says that Moshe wanted to show them that there's certain boundaries in the world. Just like you can't turn now to be tomorrow, right? You can't turn night into day. or day into night. If you could change day to night, then you could change a Kohen, you could change Moshe. But just like there's separation between day and night, so too there's a separation between Moshe and Aaron and the Jewish people. Just like God separated night from day, He separated the position of the high priest from the Jewish people. But the Rebbe says this that Rashi says needs to be understood. The first question, the first idea that Moshe wanted to wait till the next morning for them to do tshuva. Why does he have to wait till tomorrow for them to do tshuva? Let them do tshuva right away. Tshuva is something you could do on the spot. I mean, the idea basically is to give them time. But did Moshe have that time? If you're waiting for them to do tshuva, what's the limitations of tomorrow? And let's say they wouldn't be able to do tshuva right away. What makes tomorrow the deadline? Maybe give them 5 days, maybe give them a year. Why is tomorrow the deadline to do repentance? There's no telling the time. Someone could do tshuva immediately, someone tomorrow, someone in a month from now. So why does Moshe give a deadline till tomorrow? Also the second idea, that there's a separation between day and night. It doesn't say anywhere that Korach came at night. Korach came to Moshe during the day. He said to wait the night till the next morning. We say that whole night Korach was busy stirring up the revolution. So why did he just already from when it turned night there was already a separation? We saw the difference between morning or daytime and nighttime when it comes night. So let Moshe do whatever he had to do at night. The main question the Rebbe says is, what is the real answer to Korach's claim? If the action is the main thing, and everyone does the mitzvah equally, as long as they know how to perform the mitzvah, so why is the concept of Moshe Rabbeinu exist? Why does the position of Aaron exist? So the idea is that when Moshe said that everyone should take a pan to sacrifice the Ketores, and he showed, actually God did not choose Korach, He chose Aaron. And obviously God told Moshe to do this. But he still didn't answer. It means even though God showed that what Moshe did was right, because Korach was burnt, and the other 250 of his companions were burnt, and Aaron, God accepted his sacrifice, and then later the staff of Aaron, right? All the signs that God showed. But fundamentally, in the hashkafa of things, why is Korach wrong? And here the Rebbe says something else. Everything that he did was only to show that Aaron was the high priest. What about his issues with Moshe? We have to say that within the weight of tomorrow, we're going to see why Korach was wrong. I have to go a little faster because I have to end up soon. There's Admir Zakim Medaik B'Lashin Shuva Ma'asim Tovim Shemuva L'Reiv B'Divrei Zal V'Loi Shuva U'Mitzvah Simavar. When the Alter Rebbe explains, when we talk about repentance, we don't say a person should do tshuva and commandments and the mitzvahs. A person should do tshuva and good deeds or good actions. A person very likely can do a mitzvah, but it's not considered, do the technical of the mitzvah, but it's not called a good deed. It's not a good action. They're not lit up. You did the mitzvah technically. There's lacking a lot of shine in those mitzvahs. Therefore, when the rabbis say a person does tshuva, it doesn't say he does tshuva in the action of mitzvah. He does tshuva ma'asim tovim, good actions. When a person does proper tshuva, then how do we see the repentance or the return in the person? Is when he or she's actions become nice actions, not just technical actions. What's the example? If you have bright stones that have mud on them, then not only are they not when you have mud on diamonds, The diamond is not shine, it prevents the light from coming out. You can't say a diamond's a less of a diamond because it's covered in mud. You may not want to use it, but quality-wise, it's a diamond. But the effect of the diamond is not there. It's a diamond in mud. It has nothing. It doesn't give off any shine. It's the same idea as mitzvahs. The idea of the mitzvah is not the technicality of the mitzvah as much as through the technicality of the mitzvah, the ma'isa, it brings light into the world. The problem sometimes. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the Rebbe doesn't explain that a person's mitzvah, temporarily at least, is the opposite. It's not bringing light to the world. If a person's an evil person, a wicked person, so and that person puts on film, and that person studies Torah, not only don't the mitzvahs light up, on the contrary, sometimes they could actually add darkness to the world. Because they haven't changed themselves. We're talking about people that are consciously being bad people. So they haven't changed themselves. And the mitzvahs have power. So that the power is going to the wrong places. And we're not just talking about evil people. If a person does the mitzvahs for the wrong reasons, shaloi lishma means without the right intention. For an agenda. People should think you're holy. People should respect you. You should get kavod. We see clearly, sometimes a person, by doing a mitzvah, actually, with the wrong intentions, could fan the person's ego. By praising themselves inwardly. Look how great I am. I was able to overcome the challenge and I did this mitzvah. I had this temptation not to do the mitzvah. I didn't want to give the tzedakah. I gave the tzedakah. But if you don't do the mitzvah, at the end of the day, mitzvah has to be pure without any pnius, without any agenda. And as long as there's a personal agenda, personal benefit, that it fans your mitzias, your entity, not your holiness, but your mitzias makes you feel that you're a better person for doing the mitzvah. That's a pniya, that's an agenda. Especially sometimes when a person is diligent in a mitzvah, that fans even more the ego. That's the opposite of a mitzvah. The mitzvah is about, although the God wanted the action, but through the action, the idea is you're connecting. When a person does the mitzvah, you connect to God. And when a person fans their ego, and their ego grows, the more your ego grows, the more you're disconnected from God. Because it clearly says, the Torah brings down a quote from the Chachamim about a person who's a Baal Gaiva. I can't be in the same space as a person with an ego. So if the mitzvahs are fanning your ego, it's a fanning a disconnect. No, it's like a diamond. Fundamentally, the mitzvah is there. You did the mitzvah, you studied the Torah, no one's taking that away from you. Therefore it says, and the halacha is, a person can't say, well, I'm wicked, so I'm not going to put on tefillin. I'm wicked, I'm not going to study Torah. No, because you have to study the Torah because at the end of the day, the Torah is there. Surely you have to do the mitzvahs. But person says, I don't want to do the mitzvah. Because when I do the mitzvah, I'm adding energy to negativity. It's fanning my ego. It's giving more energy to the places of impurity. The Torah says, no, never mind that. Because you still have to do the Torah mitzvahs. At the end of the day, but when you want to fix that, correct the mistakes you made in how you performed the mitzvahs and studied Torah. And the Rebbe says, you will do tshuva. Chazaka, we could take it clearly. A person's going to do tshuva, like it says, no one's going to be pushed away. Then those same mitzvahs that you did wrong will be taken out of the places of impurity and they start giving light. And that's why you have to continue to study Torah mitzvahs, even though you know when you're studying them for the wrong reasons. And you can't control yourself to study them from the right reasons. But eventually you will do tshuva and you will fix your mistakes. And then those actions won't go away and they'll be taken from the wrong places and giving light to the right places. But until you've done the tshuva, At that moment, until you've done the repentance, these mixed mitzvahs are like diamonds in mud. And they're not only in the mud, they're giving away a darkness. I'm going to have to skip. I wanted to skip to the answer. Let's see how much time we have, because we don't have. I'm just going to get to a little bit of the answer because I have to go. This is Moshe tells Korach. Hey Nemes, I know. I see what you're saying. The action is the main thing. That's why he waited to the morning. Boiker is when the sun shines. Moshe wanted to tell them a mitzvah has to have a shine. Your mitzvahs have to be bright. It gives knowledge to God. What's the idea of yoida avaya? Not just that God will show, but the idea of das in God, understanding and godliness. Yedias v'gilei likus, the idea of your mitzvahs has to bring understanding and revelation of godliness to the world. Yes, you may do the mitzvah with the wrong intentions. If you don't have the right shine to the mitzvah, it's not bringing the light in the world the way it should be. It's not bringing knowledge of godliness to the world. And this is what Moshe was talking about, that it means the idea of mourning. Okay, again, I must go. I just want to finish off this last piece. Now we understand why Moshe, the answer to Korach, why is the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu exist? Yes, God is amongst the people, everyone's holy. Every Jew is definitely holy. It's not just that your soul is holy. We know God chose the bodies of the Jewish people. Your body is holy. A Jewish body of a man and a woman is a holy body. And because the person is holy, the person has the ability, through his or her mitzvahs, to bring down. Yes, you can reveal the essence of God in your soul and your body, the essential name of God. Nevertheless, it's not enough that you're doing the action of the mitzvah, but the idea is that you need the shine of the mitzvah. Maisim tovim, it's not good to do maisim alone. It has to be good actions. Umihirim, and bright actions. Lechein, one, yesh ili gam b'maisim mitzvah shal Moshe Rabbeinu al mitzvah shakol shari b'nei Yisrael. Yes, Moshe's mitzvahs are different than the regular person's mitzvah, because Moshe's mitzvah has all the shine in it. V'iluhu ili shven erech, and it's not just any kind of difference, it's a huge difference. But the second idea is, tzrichim lekabus kol hashpais Moshe Rabbeinu. You have to receive everything from Moshe. And from the extension of Moshe in every generation. Not only when it comes to your heart and to your mind. You want to know, where could you learn that every part of your existence, your nefesh, your guf, the way you do a mitzvah, you need to connect to Moshe. It's not just that Moshe teaches you about it, but where do you get the ability and the knowledge and the connect to bring shine to all the actions and all the parts of your life, is being by connection and receiving from Moshe Rabbeinu the ability to bring shine to all your actions. And the Rebbe continues obviously with the idea of Gimel Tammuz and the idea of Hiskashrus, but I have to go. Someone's waiting for me. Laila Tov, everyone. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh, and a meaningful Shabbos.